pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Rescue 7, come in. This is dispatch, over. Rescue 7, come in. This is dispatch. Do you copy, over?
Come in, dispatch. Send for paramedics.
The pod bay doors are open. Welcome once again. I'm your host, Jerry Dean Roberts of ArmchairCinema.com and also ArmchairOscars.com. And joining me across the graveyard, out of the grave and ready to party, is my co-host, the critic, dare I say legend, from TalkMovieMan.com, Mr. Doug Heller. I almost forgot your name.
I don't need to tell you anything, Dick Brain.
That's a lovely quote, isn't it?
I think you'll find by now that I really just like...
I think T.H. Lawrence wrote that, right?
No, it was John Milton. John Masefield. That's an upcoming episode.
Yes.
I have a tendency to really like inventive curse word insults.
Mm-hmm.
Refer back to my quote for E.T.
Mm-hmm.
And actually quite a bit of my quotes end up being very creative curse-outs.
You must really love Full Metal Jacket.
The beginning is a gold mine.
Welcome to week 3 of Shocktober. Shocktober month. We're going to have a little fun today because this is a teenage favorite. And we're talking about 1985. We're talking about The Return of the Living Dead. The only zombie movie I've seen more than 6 times. You have no idea how many times I've seen this.
I have now seen it twice. I watched it at the beginning of October, and I watched it the day before we were recording.
Yeah, and I've been holding off on this because I was going to do this last year, but first of all, I didn't know if there was any real conversation in it, and the other thing is, I hold off on childhood favorites because what's necessarily, a movie that might be Rocky III, important to you, Rocky III, might not, Rocky III, be important to, somebody else, Rocky III. And so they may not have the same perspective.
Right, and you don't want to risk a conversation like what would probably happen if we did Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which I am not a fan of, and you grew up
And I
am. Many people are.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it until I was over 20, and it did not appeal to me.
Oh, I saw it when I was like 5 or 6.
I saw it when I was little, up until Augustus Gloop turned into a blueberry. Or no, the girl turned into a blueberry.
Mm-hmm.
When she blew up like that, I was too grossed.
What gets me about that scene where the girl turns into a blueberry is what Willy Wonka says. He says, "That's the problem. They all become blueberries." I'm thinking, how many times have you tried this?
Yeah, right.
How many kids have you turned into blueberries
Or
to
Oompa
make
Loompas.
this confection?
How many Oompa Loompas have turned into blueberries? And is Oompa Loompa anatomy similar enough to ours that you can base a reaction from them off of what and say what we're going to do?
There's a conversation right there. But no, we're talking today about Return of the Living Dead, and I was very, very leery about putting this one on the show because I didn't know what you were going to think about it.
Yeah.
And this is a prime example of was it Pauline Kael said we have to appreciate great trash?
Yes.
This is a prime example of that because this is great trash.
Yeah. When I was watching it the first time, I sat here and 15 minutes in, after during the graveyard sequence, when we're introduced to the friends, Spider and Suicide and Trash and they're so bad.
Mhm.
And I'm watching this and I texted you and I said, "Are you sure you don't want to do this in November?"
I was trying to figure out at what point you actually,
Well,
because there was a point you actually turned on it.
there is a pinpointed moment. I got it down to the exact moment, just like I did with The Godfather.
Mhm.
The moment that turned it around, the cadavers coming out of the freezer,
Mhm.
the meat locker, and they're yelling about what they should do, and there's we should destroy the brain. That's what they did in the movie, and they get that pickaxe, and he just
You mean
flips
the
it.
movie lied?
You mean the movie lied? And I'm starting to kind of, when he gets the bone saw,
Mhm.
saws off the head.
Which there's no blade in the saw, by the way.
Right. And the body just leaps up and starts moving around. That was too funny for me, and I lost it. And at that moment, I'm like, okay, I'm in this movie forever. And when I rewatched it last night, it was only funnier because I understood the tone that they were going for from the beginning. The second time through, and it was just so much funnier.
They realize what a ridiculous concept they have.
Yeah.
And they make it funny, but they also make it just funny enough and just horrifying enough.
Well, see, you buried the lead on this one for me, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because you're saying, oh, this is done by the producers of the producer of Night of the Living Dead. I'm like, okay, well that's it's got some street cred. Then all right. You neglected to mention that A, it was written and directed by Mr. Alien Dan O'Bannon, and B,
The late Dan O'Bannon.
yes, and B, you neglected to inform me, and this is top above the bill for me all the way through. You neglected to mention that it starred prominently throughout from beginning to end
Clu Gulager.
If you had said this is written and directed by Dan O'Bannon from the producer of Night of the Living Dead, starring Clu Gulager, I would have watched this 30 times before you even got done saying the sentence. So you buried
Well,
the
I didn't want to. I didn't want to. You know, I didn't want to open all the doors.
It's an embarrassment of riches. If you're, I adore the atrocity of Clu Gulager so much that this was just a treat.
Clu Gulager, a former, mostly a Western actor.
Yeah.
He was on Wagon Train, and he's been in show business for 60, 70 years. He's still living, by the way.
Yeah.
Somehow. And I didn't tell you too much. I just wanted you to see this.
If you had said starring Clu Gulager, that's all I would have needed.
Well, this movie, there was a problem with it because John Russo was one of the producers on Night of the Living Dead, and had a disagreement with George Romero over where this series should go. And they were Splitsville on some of the ownership. They went to court, and the court determined that Romero could have the title Dead, and Russo could have the title Living Dead. This is the kind of arrangement only lawyers could come up with.
Okay.
And so
I now see it very clearly, knowing the titles of the other movies.
Right. So, yeah, and by the way, Romero went on to make. There are 7 movies in that series. I've seen 3 of them.
Night of the Living Dead, Dawn, Day,
Land,
Land,
Diary,
and
Survival.
Survival. Yeah, that the 6 or 7 of them. I think I have 45 minutes left in Day of the Dead, and then I will have seen the same 3 you have.
Yeah.
Day of the Dead,
Well,
which was released 2 weeks before this one.
yeah. Well, that's why I mentioned it because actually we're going to throw pepper in a little bit of Day of the Dead because that was in 1980 in the summer of '85. This was released in the second week of August, and Day of the Dead was released on the last week of August. And everybody thought because Dawn of the Dead was so successful
Mm-hmm.
and was such a good movie,
Mm-hmm.
people just couldn't wait for this.
Mm-hmm.
Horror fans were just, dare I say, hungry for it. And so what they did was MGM released Return of the Living Dead a few weeks before it. So it was seen as kind of an appetizer for the real zombie movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turned out that Return of the Living Dead was the surprise, and Day of the Dead was a chunk of shit, and most people hated it. Critics ran all over it.
I bet.
And I get it.
Yeah.
Because Return of the Living Dead is the far superior movie. And like I say, I've seen this I don't know how many times. I love this movie. I do.
This is I loved Return of the Living Dead so much by the end of the first time, and even more by the end of the second time, that I have actually located the sequels and have plans to watch them this month.
Yeah.
I know that is setting me up for a great deal of disappointment.
I've seen the second one. The second one is essentially basically a remake of the first one.
Well, from what I gather from I looked at the synopses of all of them, they are literally all some jackass spills something from Night of the Living Dead, makes zombies, they kill everybody in the area, and then 20 years later, it happens again. That's basically and not a single one of these are there's no continuity, there's no repeating people. Every single one of them is made by a different crew.
No, the two guys that are in this one that get the virus, the same thing happens in the second one. With the same 2 actors.
But they're different characters.
Different characters. They're grave diggers.
Right.
Or they're grave robbers.
But in the third one they don't show up. James
No.
Karen, which again, if you had told me that he is prominently in this too,
he's great. He is great.
I love this man. His way of taking just awful dialogue and making a delivery that makes it feel like it would exist in the real world, but sardonically. I love his delivery. And the Dead way he can just look so serious when he's delivering the corniest idiocy. When he's telling the story about the true story about where the containers came from.
Yeah, because, I mean, when it opens with him just showing Freddy around, and
it's hard to get the tone in that, because it's like, I want to think that they're trying to be funny, but at the same time, they're not. And it was a weird place to start.
he's got this kind of delivery like an elementary school teacher or something, and he's just showing this kind of dim-witted kid around. Showing him around the smallest medical warehouse in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a couple of shelves.
Yeah. In Louisville, Kentucky.
And he, it's just like his whole, when they're putting the skeleton in the crate. And he's going, let's put some styrofoam peanuts in here.
Excelsior in there, make a nice bed for her so she's nice and comfortable. All right.
Now, a nice little Betty pie for this little lady.
And put the packing peanuts in there. Now don't be stingy. Bert's paying for it, not you.
Yeah. What I love is you can see stuff coming because as soon as you see the split dogs, you're like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Now you're in for a treat here. These are split dogs. I'm like, oh no.
And yes, they do.
They do. When he's trying, the saddest moment in this comes real early, when they do reanimate, the split dogs reanimate, and they're just crying in pain, and he tries to kill it, and he starts beating it, and it's just whimpering from pain.
And he's beating it with a crutch.
Oh my god! I have never felt more sympathy for a creature in a movie than I did in that moment for that dog. I mean, and the franticness and I love how just damn stupid they are that sets this whole thing off, right? So
they're idiots.
He's showing him this thing. He's, do they ever leak? And Frank's like, no, these were made by the United States Army.
These were made by the Army's Corps of Engineers.
Bang!
Built to last.
And then it just breaks open because you can see the corrosion.
But we got to talk about when they're sitting in that office.
That's it.
And first of all, what office has a nudie calendar on the wall?
This one. The same one that has a fake eye chart that says Bert is a slave driver.
And is going bald too.
Yeah. I couldn't make out what was the smaller ones, but the first time I saw it, I saw the Bert's a slave driver. I'm like, okay, that's funny.
The kid says, this kid is great. It's Tom Matthews is great.
Yeah.
And he says, what's the weirdest thing you've ever seen in here? And he says, oh, kid, I've seen things come, I've seen things go. And he says, have you ever seen that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Right.
That was when I clicked. I was like, okay, I know now where this movie is. And he starts talking about there was something that happened. They were using some chemical on marijuana, I think to kill marijuana leaves or something like that. And the gas the gas from it leaked down into the morgue.
Right.
And the bodies jumped around and so they put the bodies in tanks and they were going to ship them to the Darrow Chemical facility. And through some clerical error, they ended up going to this warehouse in a remote part of Kentucky.
In Louisville, it's Louisville, but it's really outside of Louisville.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not in the better part of
Louisville's
Louisville.
not a bustling metropolis in the first place, but this is an even smaller part of the outside of it. And how they got it, I can't. Even a mistake would probably have bypassed that place.
Well, you would think they would question the truck driver. It's like, okay, where did you take them?
Right.
Yeah.
Where,
and it's been 14 years.
Yeah, and there's one guy who always has to be available, who is a dick. Terrible person, just awful to his wife.
Yeah.
What are we having for dinner? Your favorite, it's lamb chops. I had it for lunch. What kind of a dickweed has lamb chops for lunch, first of all?
Well,
and second of all, does not say, hey wife, do not cook this for dinner. I had it for lunch.
Right.
He's an asshole.
Yeah. Well, you know what I love? What I love is this whole scene in the office. I love the look on Freddy's face when he's telling him this story.
Oh my God, yeah.
He has these big, wide eyes, these big, wide puppy dog eyes. It's like you're telling a kid a story.
Yeah.
The only thing missing is for him to have his hands under his chin.
You know, and I want to say, even in these moments before I really caught the tone,
Mhm.
I loved the relationship that Frank and Freddie have.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it is not your standard lazy kid, you know, like the opening of Hobgoblins with the
Yeah.
cranky night watchman showing around the kid. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, he's listening to his rock music so loud and hates
Mhm.
it. No, they are actually getting along really,
You got a bright
really
future in
well.
the warehouse business.
they're they're actually like buddy, and I love it. I love how
Yeah.
like Frank is really taking Freddy under his wing and just like they're actually befriending each other, and they like each other. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's a really refreshing attitude to
Yeah.
have in something like this, and you see their demise as they degrade over the course of the film. They stay together until really the very end.
Yeah. Until they split apart because Freddy succumbs to the virus,
So does
and
Frank
well,
is
Frank decides
starting
to kill
but
himself.
yes, Frank makes the heroic sacrifice of
Mhm.
pitching himself into the furnace uh, so that his stuff can go up and infect more dead. Um,
Right.
because so, all right,
That's one thing I love about this movie.
it's,
It's escalating.
they continuously compound their issue.
Yeah, because they don't know it. They
No,
really don't know what they're doing because it starts again. He slaps that tank on this. Slaps the tank on the side, and it starts to leak because you can see the corrosion in it
hmm
because it's not been properly stored. They stuck it in the basement. First of all, why do they have this?
right.
Why have they kept this for 14 years? There's a phone number on the side
Why
of the
didn't they
tank.
call the number on the side of the tank? Well, see, here's the thing that I put together the second time, because
Mhm.
Freddy asks that question:
Mhm.
Why didn't you call them, or why don't we call them?
Mhm.
And he's like, "Do you want the army snooping around here? I think there's something else going on in this medical supply warehouse that may be how it remains open,
Mhm.
that may not be above board."
Right.
Uh, and I don't think they want regulators walking in there.
Mhm.
CDC,
Well, nobody
FDA,
does.
yeah,
No. Well, nobody would. I mean,
granted, but you would expect that there's probably a code that they have to keep up that they
mhm.
don't,
Yeah.
and they know they don't. So they are like, okay, let's just tread lightly, keep our operation small, so that it's too small to be
Ultra small.
yeah, it's too small to be. It doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of the empire, and
Mhm.
the mining guild. It's too
Mhm.
small of an operation, and most of the customers are anxious to avoid attracting attention. So I
And I
just
have a feeling
turned
that
this warehouse into Cloud City, but
I have a feeling that this warehouse supplies things probably to local hospitals.
yeah.
So it stays pretty much off the radar. It's not nationwide.
hmm
Um, and like I said, it looks like it's in kind of a remote part of Louisville. So it's like, yeah, again, it's like having the health inspector come around your restaurant. You just don't want people snooping around. You just really would rather
Yeah,
not have people
yeah.
doing that.
And if you have a backstory with them, like in Bob's Burgers, then they'll never
Mhm.
leave you alone.
Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. But it's so funny because once it starts, they can't get it stopped.
No.
And it's a great, by the way, I love the openings. I love the title sequence in this
Yeah.
because they once the thing leaks out, so does the body.
hmm this is a cold open to end cold opens. Like this is like
Yeah.
10 minutes into the
Hmm.
movie before you even get the credit sequence, before you even have
Yeah.
an inkling as to if you were walking into this in a movie theater like a critic screening where they
Hmm.
don't tell you what you're watching next.
And you're late.
Yeah, and you walk in and you don't have well, not even if you're late, if you're there on time, it just opens. It just
Hmm.
starts. Boom. There's MGM. Boom. There's the sign for the warehouse. Pull out, and you're already into Freddy getting the tour.
Yeah.
And the credits don't show up until you're 10, 15 minutes into the movie. It's like
Yeah.
they forgot to even put them in. It's like, oh, wait, this is a requirement. We have to do this. Hold on.
Well, they stick the tone in there. The tone of it is they kind of stick you into this, and it's not. There's nothing horrifying going on.
No.
Um, and they establish it very well,
Hmm.
and they don't start with the opening credits until they need to. And like they say, that's 10 minutes into the movie. And then it's another 5-minute opening credit sequence, which is kind of brilliant because you're seeing what happens because the thing leaks out and then it gets into the air conditioning,
Hmm.
and then it leaks down into the cooler, understand, into the freezer, and it awakens the cadaver in the freezer.
Thankfully, there was only one cadaver in the freezer.
The cadaver, yeah, he says usually there's 4 or 5. There's the cadaver in the freezer, the split dogs,
Hmm.
and the guy in the tank.
Yeah.
And my thing is, when they wake up, where's the guy in the tank?
We find out
Yeah.
he's gross.
Tarman.
Yeah. Wow.
Tarman. I mean
That's an
that's
effect.
kind of a great effect.
Yeah. Oh, the effects in this are one of its main virtues. I think
Mhm.
that I
Even Romero's film didn't have zombies this interesting.
no, and I love the creature design, and
Mhm.
it's a lot more care and effort than some green paint.
Yeah.
Some,
Which they had in Dawn of the
green
Dead.
makeup. Yeah, in Dawn of the Dead, they basically shot in the dark, so they didn't really have to do too much of anything.
Mhm.
Which I commend because I've been in that mall. It must be really expensive to shoot, to keep lit. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that the darkness was to keep costs down, but you could barely see anything in that movie. So
Right.
in this, it's broad, bright, light, fluorescent light, and in Day of the Dead, there's it's full, vibrant daylight color, and all they have is just makeup, good makeup, but
Yeah.
um, the element of not only their realism here,
Mhm.
but the fact that they give them a voice,
Mhm.
consciousness, like real. They're not going off of instinct like Romero's are.
Mhm.
They are going because they're reanimated, but apparently even in their unanimated, they can still feel themselves decomposing.
Mhm.
And eating brains makes that pain go away for a minute.
Mhm.
So it's
So it's like a drug.
yeah, it's like a pain medication for them.
Mhm.
And
And all they think about,
yeah,
they're like drug addicts.
right.
All they think about is eating brains.
Right. And if you really think they're no longer animate, but they're still holding this thought.
Mhm.
And they're still their nerve centers are still sending
Mhm.
reception of pain, and it's still somewhat active. That's
Right.
horrifying.
Mhm.
Absolutely horrifying.
But I got to ask you though, how many people are buried in that cemetery?
Apparently 100.
Because, I mean, there are hundreds
Yeah.
of thousands of these things.
Yeah.
And I love the way they portray them. Because, like I said, it's a comedy, but they never forget to make it a horror movie.
Right.
There are scenes I love. There are scenes that are chilling in this. The scene where Bert and Spider go out to steal the car, and they're driving toward this dark area. And you see the zombies running toward them, and the zombies are in silhouette with a light behind them and the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how many of them there are.
Right, and you realize because of what they did when they finally they cut this cadaver's head off, find out that doesn't do anything. Finally, pin it down and cut it into pieces and put it and the split dogs into garbage bags so that they can't wander off.
Mm-hmm.
They take them over to the crematorium.
Ernie.
Ernie.
I love Ernie.
I do too. I do too. I can't.
Despite his fascination with Nazism, I like Ernie.
Yeah. That was unsettling.
That was unsettling. Why does he have a picture of Ava Braun on the wall?
Listen, I share a birthday with her, and I don't have a picture of
Yes.
her anywhere.
Well,
that was a terrible moment to find that out. For me.
Yeah, well, I share a birthday with Joe McCarthy. I'm in there with you.
Hey, I not only Ava Braun, but Ronald Reagan. Okay, so I think I win on the terrible birthday.
Terrible birthday people.
Right. But I also have Bob Marley and Francois Truffaut, so
that's true.
I do get some balance.
Well, they don't know what to do with it because they keep cutting it up and it's still wiggling around.
Yeah, so they take it and they burn it. And
they take it across the street to the mortuary, and they tell him
that it's
very casually
rabid weasels that were sent
to
to
your crematorium
in a botched thing. They were supposed to be just for test subjects, but they ended up being rabid, and he was wondering if they could just burn them alive. And
you can't burn animals alive.
Like,
that's cruel.
At least take them out into the parking lot. Let me put them out of their misery. I'm so shooting them for target practice in the parking lot is not cruel. But torching them alive.
But in Kentucky, not unusual.
Well, yes, that's true. And given his profession, and how he was, breaking up the rigor mortis, and you won't find that in a book, my friend. This is embalming is mostly passed down by word. He is.
I was so grossed out by that bruise on that guy's side.
Yeah, this man is a serial killer that just never found the motivation.
Mm-hmm. Or the time.
Yeah. So I think that's where he's, well, let's just shoot the animal. No. And then he finally finds out what it is. When the hand comes after him and rips his pants.
And he takes it so well because
he really does.
He takes it so well because he's sitting there. There's this wonderful moment when he's sitting there, and he says, "What favor could I owe you?" And he sits there for just a minute, and he cuts the leg off of his pants. The whole movie stops, and you're just sitting there watching him cut the leg off of his pants.
It's great.
All right, let's take care of your problem. The problem is, this only compounds a larger problem.
Right, because the smoke, whatever this virus or whatever it is, chemical that does this.
This reanimation gas.
Right, so they put him in the crematory furnace, and Clu Gulager is all, we've got to be able to destroy the heart and the bones and the... Now, what are bones gonna do? There's no musculature to connect it so that it can walk around to eat any brains. And those skeletons in the warehouse didn't come alive either.
Right.
So the bones shouldn't be that big of a deal.
Mm.
But they are for him.
But you want to get rid of all the evidence.
Right, that's also true. So he says, all right, we're going to turn it all the way up. We'll burn the bones. We'll burn down the heart. We won't have anything but a pile of ashes. He goes, I don't even want the ashes. I don't know how you can burn anything without and not have ashes, but...
And this, by the way, while all this is going on, Frank and Freddy are looking very, very pale.
Oh, they are just paling by the minute.
They got rings under their, dark circles under their eyes. Their lips are turning blue, and they are pale. Because when he finally ends up burning them, it's like, we've got to sit down for a minute, and they both get sick. And meanwhile, the smoke
is billowing out
into the clouds,
seeding them,
and
it starts to rain. And it catches the group of friends, which are very mismatched, in my
that's a
opinion.
weird group, because we meet Freddy's friends. They come over to they come down to the to the medical supply warehouse just to kind of. It's Trash and Suicide
right. So
and Spider and Scuzz,
who is basically the guy on the bus in Star Trek 4.
Who gets his feelings hurt.
Yeah. Girl...
Why do you guys only call me when you need to ride someplace? Because you're one spooky motherfucker.
Then you've got a girl who obsesses and gets sexually excited over violence and death.
I love the line. You ever fantasize about all the different ways to die? It's like never,
no, never. Spider is my favorite character, by the way. Spider is my favorite character in the movie.
Who says "fuck you" more times than anybody I've ever seen since Joe Pesci.
And you know what? Every time he does, he's completely justified in it.
I was hoping I was listening to the commentary by the director, and I was really hoping that he would address this. They all seem to have a different look. Of course,
the girl,
the threes.
You've got Budget Debbie Harry.
Yeah.
You've
got a guy who's dressed like the lead singer from the Talking Heads.
Yeah.
And you've got Spider who's dressed like Rick James.
Yeah. And you've got the punker, you've got the goth, you've got a representative of every kind of teenager and I guess at the time post-teen angst expression. All in one group.
It's that thing that you had in the 80s where you have the diverse street gang,
right?
Kind of
thing. It's diverse because they get one of each kind of person that they could find, and it's not believable in any degree.
Right. Right.
And
although I do like the line, where do we want to party? It's like, well, let's go to the park. No, the cops said they'd shoot us if we go to the park.
Yeah, we can't go to the park anymore. We can't. Oh yeah.
And they end up going to this cemetery, which doesn't look as big as it does later. The topography of this cemetery, it looks very, very small. And they decide they're just going to party at it till Freddy gets off work. And I love the line
because they don't want to. So they pull up to the warehouse and they're looking at the warehouse, and they're like, well,
"I don't want to sit here 2 fucking hours.
For 2 hours. Well, let's go over there, 16 inches away.
Let's go fool around in the cemetery." A cemetery which is locked, by the way.
Yeah, they have to go over the thing.
No, they have to break the lock.
Right. So, and look, you know, movies have given us a false impression as to the hours of cemeteries. They close at dusk.
Yeah.
So there's no cemetery in the world. Is there a place that's open after dark that's there for brooding pleasure?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, they had a chain padlock on it.
Yeah. So they're there and they're just hanging out. Are they drinking?
Yeah. They're out there partying, and I love the line. There's one line here that I love. Let's get some light over here. Trash is taking off her clothes again.
Yeah.
Which indicates that this is a regular thing.
Well, she does do it with speed, so it may be something that she does frequently.
What are the road flares for?
You're right. Yeah. And she spends the rest of the movie nothing but leg warmers.
Yes. Yes.
Which, could be worse.
Well, she does her little naked dancing on the gravestones.
Right.
Not necessary, but we appreciate it.
Yeah. We thank you for your service.
Thank you. There's a reason that Linnea Quigley became a screen queen. Bless her heart.
Yes, she's running. She ends up being a naked zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Which
she got her wish. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, she got torn apart by old men.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much dead. But you can't get much older than dead.
Well, this stuff leaks out into the cemetery
because it gets into the rain and it just rains on everything, and it actually, they said it feels like acid rain. Like it feels different. Like I thought that it was going to start affecting the live persons as well.
That's an interesting thing. There's no virus here. There's no
yeah, it's just a chemical.
Yeah, there's no, like in Dawn of the Dead when the guy gets bit in the leg and then eventually turns into a zombie. Mm-hmm. There's none of that.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And I like the fact that it's reanimating the dead. And I find zombies crawling out of the ground scarier than when your next door neighbor gets bit by a zombie. I find the crawling out of the ground thing scarier than 28 days later.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's
because there are more of them than there are of us.
As my I think it was my mother-in-law's uncle used to always say, there are more dead people now than there ever have been at any other point in history.
Mm-hmm.
And that is true every time you say it.
Mm-hmm. That is never not true.
Yeah, and I have, ever since she told me that, I'm like, that is one of the greatest statements I've ever heard in my life.
The rest of this movie is utter and complete chaos. I love
how the distance between the warehouse and the mortuary gets farther and farther and farther apart as the movie goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they're first going over there, they're just taking it like across the street.
Yeah.
But by the time the zombies are in full swing, it's like 14 miles away through a forest.
Well, it looks that way because there's so many zombies out there.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, they're barricading themselves inside of this mortuary or inside of the warehouse, whichever side they're on. And when you look outside, there's not a couple of zombies. No. Like in Romero's films, you look on the countryside, there's 4 or 5 in the background.
Because he only had enough money for 4 or 5 people.
Well, I mean, look, when you look, I mean, the extras in this thing, it's astonishing
Yeah.
because there are hundreds of these things.
This has a lot more money than I think any of the Romero movies had.
This was $4 million.
Like I said, I think this had more money than every Romero film ever made combined.
I think this had a lot more thought.
Wow.
Because the thing is, the Romero films never really tell you generally never tell you where the zombies came from.
Right. It's his focus is on a group of people surviving this terrible situation.
Well, this one is too, but it's they are very clear about where and why this is happening. When I was watching Dawn of the Dead, they never tell you.
No.
When I was watching Day of the Dead, they never tell you.
They also don't tell you how long it's been since Night of the Living Dead.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I don't know in Dawn of the Dead if it is the 10 years.
I think it was a couple of weeks, but I want to think it was the 10 years.
Like, because it feels like they've been at this a long time, but it also feels like they're still very rushed in trying to figure things out. So it's the time frame, and the time frame of Day of the Dead, I have no idea.
It's sometime. I want to think it's the 7 years because the world has been decimated by this. The thing I didn't like about Dawn of the Dead was I had a very, very difficult time getting my feet into it. We were talking about the beginning of this movie, where you got the warehouse and then the gas leaks, and so we follow a progression. Dawn of the Dead is so Dawn of the Dead opens with such chaos,
Right. Like
that it's hard to really get your head into what's going on.
because you're in this television studio.
You're in a television station.
I watched it for the first time yesterday, so.
Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, this is the first time I've ever sat down and watched them from beginning to end. I've seen them in parts. I've started them and stopped them, but this is the first time that I've ever sat down and watched them from beginning to end. I see a flaw in Dawn of the Dead, although I love that movie. I do love that movie.
It's very good. It's over.
The commentary.
Yeah.
When they're going into that tenement, the commentary there is an inch thick.
Oh, it's I was very, very off put by the racist cop at the beginning. I was very off put at the white supremacist.
Fits the commentary.
It does, and
I mean, you don't want to hear it, but it still fits the commentary.
It follows that. It goes into. He carries that over into Day of the Dead with the soldiers.
They're just sexually violent.
They get off on threatening sexual violence to the only woman in their compound. They are just giddy for just violence and horrifying things, and like that's the same commentary.
Yeah.
Like that's the same the degradation of humanity and the show of what some level of power did to you in the before times and how you try to leverage that and utilize it in the after and all of that. That's what Day of the Dead was to me. Now, I still have 45 minutes left in it. I think
I've got like the last 20 minutes.
I like it more than you do, but I also it's off-putting, and I like that they're talking more and trying to find out more.
All they do is
talk. But I like the discoveries that Dr. Frankenstein is making, even though he is completely batshit crazy. And I think what he's doing is horrible, and it's gross to watch. But
my problem is, and I borrowed the quote from, I think Leonard Maltin had it right. He said, "It is relentlessly talky." There are long, long, long long passage where they're just talking about nothing. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a zombie movie, right? I haven't seen a ghoul in 45 minutes. It's just like, and they're on this they're in this cheap set, and you've got these cardboard characters, and this really annoying lead villain who every time he speaks, he talks like this.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know.
It's not a. I will never defend Day of the Dead as being a great or even particularly good movie, but I appreciate what it's saying. I've appreciated so far how it's saying it. But I
hated every minute of it.
I don't like gore for the sake of gore. I don't like horror movies that are just gross.
Were you kind of shocked? Were you kind of taken aback when they busted into that tenement in Dawn of the Dead and they blow that guy's head off? That really shocked me
and it was just after he let fly a stream of "let me kill" X, Y, and Z racial slurs. Like every kind of racial slur you could find.
He gets his.
He does, thankfully.
He gets his.
I was very happy when that happened, but
when he busts in that door and he takes that guy's head off, that was I was really shocked by that.
Yeah.
And I was really shocked because when they bite somebody, the teeth go into the skin and rip the flesh out. Yeah. That was shocking.
Yeah, yeah. And when they're in the mall, the motorcycle gang.
Yeah.
And they're literally ripping the bodies apart, and it looks like I could not watch it. I had to turn away and wait until that stuff was off the screen. It's not because I found it terrifying. It's because I didn't want to throw up.
Yeah.
And that to me isn't scary. That's just
gross.
Vomit-inducing. I don't like it in my comedy, and I don't like it in my horror.
That's why I like the fact that Return of the Living Dead doesn't do that.
No, they don't.
You see a zombie eating brains.
Yes, and there are some shots of like the brains leaking out of a head, or you see the contact and everything.
But there's no ripping.
You're right. It doesn't. Romero likes to languish in the grossness of what these creatures are doing.
He liked to let Tom Savini have his his thing.
And O'Bannon is not interested in that,
right?
Because O'Bannon understands that the scare is in them coming after you, not what they do to you when they get you.
Yeah, because there's some shots in here, as I was talking about before, there's some shots in here that are really horrifying and really scary. There's a scene where the paramedic gets back into the cab of the ambulance, and he pulls on the lights, and they're all standing there. Yeah. And he turns to his right, and this zombie is coming into the cab. I mean, just literally out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And it happens so fast, but it's so effective. And when he clicks the lights on, and they're all just standing there. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is terrifying.
Yeah. This has some really great moments of horror, of scare, of terror. And, you know, the writer and creator of the Xenomorph, I'm not surprised. Mm-hmm. His direction leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, but I mean, for what he was trying to do, he made a good movie out of it.
He did. You know, his direction, camera sets, the way he dealt with the actors, all could have been
first time director.
Yeah, it's clearly a first time in the director's seat effort.
Mm-hmm. He only directed one more film.
What else did he direct?
He directed a movie called The Resurrected. And then he never directed again.
It was that good, huh?
Yeah. But he keeps the energy which is something Day of the Dead didn't have.
Yeah, well, yeah,
He
no.
keeps the energy going.
Right. Day of the Dead
From the moment
limps along.
from the moment that stuff comes out of the tank,
Mhm.
the energy in this movie never
No,
stops.
it is relentless. You don't get a chance to catch your breath, and neither do the characters. Like there are moments, there are small moments
Hmm.
still throughout it, despite
Yeah.
the fact that it doesn't really let up its pace.
Hmm.
But it doesn't let any of that derail it.
Right.
Whereas I agree, Day of the Dead is largely a chamber drama with the
Yeah.
occasional zombie.
Hmm.
And then there's the guy that they're trying to train,
Hmm.
the telephone and the razor and the
Yeah.
book Salem
But
and Salem's Lot. Yeah, Bub. Um,
I didn't care about any of that. I was sitting there watching it. I'm like, I honestly do not care about this. I mean, just shoot it in the head and be done with it, man. Just, I'm like, come on, let's get to some violence. Let's
see,
get to something.
I
Anything but this Dr. Frankenstein crap. I
I
was like, I don't
I
care.
personally
Ugh.
appreciate the attempt to understand it.
I appreciate an idea, but they didn't execute it at all. And I come up with a different idea because this thing about training him, I don't care. I was just like, they're
Well,
teaching him how to use it, and then they're teaching him how to use a gun.
yeah,
I'm like,
well
that's healthy,
that was
you know.
stupid, and but I like them trying to put them into functional society because it cleared up and made more hilarious the end of Shaun of the Dead for me
Yeah.
when they were putting them into menial labor jobs and
Hmm.
stuff so that they could be active members of society.
Yeah.
That's immediately when he's like using the safety razor and shredding his own skin
Hmm.
and looking at the book and everything. I'm like, that's it. That's where
Yeah.
that I see that now. They're gonna be like shop owners or
Yeah.
shopkeepers or something. Like I'm like, okay, all right. That makes Shaun of the Dead even better for me, uh,
Right.
because that was the logical extension of what Dr. Frankenstein is presenting here.
Right.
Um,
Well, and I also I appreciate again the effects.
right. Yes.
If the effects work, I have a particular love for practical
Hmm.
effects. When they um, when they pull that half corpse out of the window when
Oh
they're breaking into
yeah.
the mortuary
Yeah.
and they strap it to the table,
Oh,
I didn't expect
I
this
didn't expect anything that happened in that
because
scene.
this is more interesting to me than Bub
Oh, a
because
1000%.
they got it strapped to the table and they're asking it questions.
Right, because it not only reanimated its flesh, it seems to have reanimated its consciousness as well.
And apparently, I mean, it speaks despite not having lips or vocal cords, but okay. Um,
Shut up, Jerry.
just watch the damn movie.
I don't need to tell you
Um,
anything, brain.
but they strap this thing to a table and they start questioning him. Why do you eat brains? Why do you eat people? Not people, brains.
Yeah.
And they find out that it hurts to be dead. That's interesting. I've never seen that before.
No, the basic concept is
Mhm.
horrifying.
Yeah.
That these
And
brains are an analgesic
mhm,
and
they're going to keep doing it.
right, because it's just they're drug addicts. They're looking for pain medication. They're opioid addicts.
Mhm.
The brains are their opioids.
And but as far as the special effects, you're looking at
Oh,
this corpse on this table, and you can see the rubber and the glue
mm-hmm.
and the paint. You can see the work
Yeah,
that went into
yeah,
it. Now, it may not look especially real, but it feels more real than if they used computer effects and all of that stuff.
yeah. Feeling
You can,
real is very important.
and the thing is cut in half, and you can see spinal fluid leaking out onto the table.
Right.
And I'm like, somebody had to think of
And
that.
that's the difference between like a practical effect or the digital pair in Attack of the Clones.
Right. Right.
Something that they could
Right.
have easily done with a real pair.
Right.
But they chose to do it with a computer, and it looks like she's biting air.
Right. She is biting
She
air.
is biting air, and you know, there was
For that movie, they're all biting
right.
air.
There would have been a
technically.
way for them to do that with a practical computer hybrid, and they
Right.
chose to not do that because they were drunk with power.
Yeah.
The computer imagery, but
I like the practical effects. The Tar Man, for example,
yeah,
is at one point an actor in a suit, and at one point a puppet. I have met this actor.
really,
Yeah, his name is Alan Troutman. He was ridiculously beanpole skinny at the time. And it's terrifying, but funny at the same time.
yeah, because when he finds brains, and he gets it, brains, more brains. He could not have sounded more like Cookie Monster if he tried.
Well, the funny thing is, I love this. I love this because he's not stupid.
No.
She locks herself in the little storage compartment and puts a pipe in there, and he figures out hook a chain to the door and turn the chain to pull the door off.
He creates more than just rudimentary tools. Like the zombies in this movie are the most terrifying zombies.
Yes,
In
because they give them personality.
Yeah, because you see why they're doing it. You see that there's no way to curb it. That apparently,
and there are thousands of them.
Right, and there's no way except completely incinerating the body.
And they're conscious enough, that they call in more paramedics.
Yeah.
And more cops.
Right. And it seems as though the fresher ones, the ones that have just died and turned, are more agile, more prescient, more with it than the ones that are coming up out of the ground.
Right.
Because they're in a different state of decomposition. Whereas Freddy, his brain is still.
His brain is deteriorating.
Right, but it's not it's not decayed.
Right.
Completely off. It's just not got any blood going to it. So he has more words. He can talk more. He can say more.
He's still more conscious.
I hurt myself because of you. Oh, my arm's off. But I don't care as long as you let me eat your brains.
Well, the thing is, again, the pieces, the energy, the pacing of this, that's what I missed in the Romero films, is that the pacing is relentlessly slow. And here it's a mixture, it's a combination of the energy of the scenes, the editing of the scenes, and the soundtrack.
Right. Well, I think the difference is that O'Bannon and then the subsequent Return of the Living Deads wanted to focus primarily on just the survival situation. And Romero was more serious about everything. And
I like his commentary in the second one.
sure, yeah. I mean, but his seriousness starts to show through by the third one, and I think that's why like the later ones, like Land of the Dead and Diary of the Dead and Survival of the
Mhm.
Dead, were not received well because they're too serious
Yeah.
and they're too much just dour and depressing, and it's getting down on you. The return ones
Well, and
at
that
least
and
have a sense of humor.
and it was falling into his later films were falling into into line with Shaun of the Dead
Hmm.
and 28 Days
Right,
Later and movies
right,
like that and
right.
Zombieland,
And it was
where they were really trying new
right,
stuff.
exactly. And these ones that it's kind of like the old story of, the big revolution that happens, and then one generation later it's the revolutionaries that are not living up to the party ideals, and they're the ones that founded it.
Right,
Romero, by inventing the zombies, became obsolete as a result.
right.
Um,
He never his style didn't evolve.
right, right,
He really kept making the same movie.
pretty much, yeah.
Um, and he tried other stuff, but
Yeah,
it
it
didn't.
didn't. There was one,
He made the dark half, which was really
right,
terrible.
and there was later one that he did, I think, just before Survival of the Dead, which I think was his last film, called Berserker.
I never saw that one.
I didn't see it either. I just know that it exists, and I remember 'em- I remember kind of them pushing it. Was it? Did you find it?
It's called Bruiser.
Bruiser, not
Yeah,
Berserker. Berserker is
Bruiser.
probably another film entirely. It probably exists.
He didn't really work outside of the zombie thing because I mean the zombies were his bread and
Well,
butter. But
Romero.
he made a film. He made that stupid Stephen King adaptation, The Dark Half, which was terrible. And he made it in a really an interesting film that I kind of liked called Monkey Shines,
Oh, I've heard of that.
which is about the guy who has he's paralyzed, and so his companion is a capuchin monkey,
Mm.
and it there's all this you know evil mind bending going on. It's a really interesting
Huh.
film,
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
but Romero never. I think he produced and wrote more than he did, and and his name was on more. His name was kind of like Stephen King. It's like Stephen King presents,
Right.
or
I
something
think
like that.
he was a one-trick pony.
Yeah,
Um, that's
and
not to discredit him, because Night of the Living Dead is one of the best horror movies ever made.
and so is Dawn of the
So
Dead.
yeah, I'll agree with that. And so he wasn't a nuanced filmmaker. He didn't really
No,
have a whole lot of ideas outside of that one, and he just
which helps me understand where John Russo had some
yeah,
problems.
yeah. Yes, yes. Because as a producer, you want to be able to flex out and go further,
Right,
or have the option of being able to do that later in
right.
sequels or spin-offs, or just same vein ideas.
I sense that he got stuck in horror.
Yeah.
I mean, he may have stayed in it because that was his wheelhouse, but I sense that he got stuck in it.
Hmm.
Um, but as a director, he never got out of it.
Right.
Even when he didn't do zombie films, he still made horror
Right.
films. Um, but
Because
he was a
it's
smart guy
it was
because
kind of
he
like.
always
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
he always tried to be tried to add a little bit of commentary, a little bit
Yeah.
more. But the problem is he kept making the same statements over and over again.
Exactly. Exactly. And he didn't even update the message.
No, he didn't.
Like, at least as Kubrick went along, his themes of dehumanization were expounded upon even more in each subsequent film.
Right.
Romero does not do that. He
Mm-hmm.
just says, I have this point to make.
Yeah.
And,
And I'm going to take a hammer and I'm going to beat it to death.
and I'm going to continue to hit this horse long after it's dead.
Which is why I love Return of the Living Dead so much, because it's at least it's a pure zombie movie. It does not have a lot to say. There's no real commentary here.
No, but it's energetic, it's fun. It has a few characters that you can get behind.
And a few that you can't.
And a few that you can't, and a few that you don't want to, and you know what? That's fine. And, even the ones that you can get behind,
Mm-hmm.
you don't really want to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wouldn't want to stand behind, what's the mortician's name?
Ernie.
I wouldn't want to stand behind Ernie. But I wouldn't want to have him behind me either.
Ernie really... the thing about this movie is you expect there to be at least one lead weight.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who's always screaming and arguing that we shouldn't be doing this. There's not one here.
No, everybody is on board to survive. I loved that about it too. There was there was never a scene where they had to go.
There wasn't a dick character.
Right, there wasn't a dick character. There wasn't any contentious relationships.
Mm. There wasn't a love story.
Right, yeah. Well, there's a thread of one with Freddie and what's her name? Budget Debbie Harry.
Tina?
Yeah. Because she's unwilling to leave him in the all of that.
Right.
So there's a little bit of it.
But still, even that's in the moment.
Right, they don't play that for any more than it's worth.
Which is why the only thing that I liked about the third one does take a different turn, because it has nothing to do with the other two. The third one it's about a guy who loses his girlfriend. She dies. And he uses the gas to bring her back.
Right, yeah.
It's a different turn. It's a different idea.
Well,
it's a terrible movie.
Different starting point, yeah.
It's got an idea going in. I saw it once 25 years ago. I haven't seen it again since. But like I say, it's there. It's at least got a germ of an idea. But none of the other sequels have what this one has. I love this soundtrack. It's this sort of LA punk soundtrack, arriving in Middle America.
Right. It's a very
it's not garage bands. It's real punk.
Yeah.
It's even the interstitial music is sort of this punk thing. And so they have this movie establishes and keeps its tone all the way through, even to the end. Right. And we got to talk about the ending of this movie because it's
gonna bring that up because
this thing deteriorates. This situation just deteriorates more and more and more. Nothing good happens after that gas comes out of the tank.
No, and by the time they finally they trick the tar man out of the basement.
Oh my god, I love that. They tricked the tar man to come out of the basement. Spider opened the door. I'm going to knock his damn block off.
So they get down in the basement. They call the number.
Well, no, I was going to say, I love it when they knock the tar man's head off, because you have the way this movie has been going. You would not be surprised if he just found his head and plopped it back on and kept going.
That is kind of the physics of this movie, yeah.
Because he just opens that door and he goes up, birds, and he pops, whacks him in the head with it. With the baseball bat.
It's hilarious. And so they get downstairs and they call.
They call the cops
first. The police, and then the police come and.
There's a lot of noise out here.
And then he calls the army,
Uh-huh.
and the guy's really happy. Hey, they found their stuff. All right.
Hmm.
Oh, so it punctured. Okay.
He said they've been planning this for years and they've got a contingency
Right.
plan. Well, that's good, right?
Yeah. What I think my favorite scene in the movie
Uh-huh.
is the colonel sitting on the edge of his bed.
And you don't hear the conversation.
You watch him get a recap of the movie. You don't
Uh-huh.
hear it, but you just hear his question. Okay, and what did you do then? All right, and what
Really?
happened then? Really? Huh.
Oh, really?
Oh. Well, and then what happened? I was riveted. That was one of the... just having the whole movie recapped, but we don't have to hear it. We see someone else reacting to it in possibly the greatest fashion imaginable.
Really?
Really?
And what did you do then?
Yeah. Why didn't you call us right away? Oh, yeah, that's understandable. I was enthralled by this guy. And he's just
And then-
writing this down, and then he makes another... Okay, I'm going to transfer you back over to this guy. Transfers him back over, he calls it in, and they shoot a nuclear bullet at Louisville, Kentucky, killing 4,000 people.
Well, only 20 square blocks.
Only, I mean...
Want marvelous results, Colonel.
Yeah.
Marvelous results, General. And the rain's taking care of all the fires. The president will visit Louisville, Kentucky in the morning. And the rain is coming down, and the bodies are coming up.
Yeah, again.
Again.
Because the nuclear attack would have just vaporized all of that and put it back into the air.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, this is just making it worse.
And it starts to rain, and you start hearing the screams
Yeah.
in the cemetery, and they come back up again.
Round 2. And they never even really got out of round 1. Maybe
and it just-
that's why why I was able to stick with Return of the Living Dead so much, because it's basically what we're living through in the pandemic.
It just keeps going.
Okay, let's try this. Oh, this didn't work? Well, let's try something that we know doesn't work again. Oh, okay. Well, okay, let's continue to compound our problem.
And the everything they try makes it worse.
Everything.
It just keeps going and going and going, and it's like,
When, really, if they would have just bolted the door and locked in Tarman down in the basement, this wouldn't have happened. If they would have just thrown the split dogs down into somewhere, lock them in with the thing, and just wait it out.
Or, that jar of stuff that Ernie has. Probably throw them in a container and just throw that stuff on there and burn them up.
The acid that blinds
Yeah.
Freddy.
Yeah.
Doesn't slow him down at all. Certainly doesn't shut him up.
God, I love this movie. This is a Halloween perennial for me.
It's a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be for me.
It's one of the first DVDs I ever bought.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this, because I have seen many a campy horror movie that I thought I was going to at least have fun with that I just didn't.
When they spell campy in all capital letters, it doesn't work.
Right.
When you go in to make a campy movie, it doesn't work.
No.
Scout's Guide to the Apocalypse didn't work because they intended to make a campy movie. It just, when you're trying to make it, this way, you have to have a nuance. You have to have a scary movie on top of it.
Mhm.
And when you try to make it comedy, it doesn't work because you can see the magic trick happening.
Right. The only way you can get comedy out of horror is if you genuinely have the people react like some people would,
Like
with
Ghostbusters.
reflexive humor. Yeah.
Hmm.
And some of the things are going to be ridiculous when you see them being acted out. It's like, well, but they have to try this.
Right.
But it's still funny
Right.
because when the body jumps back up after it gets its head taken off, that is a
Mhm.
laugh out loud shock moment. Like, it's hilarious. It's like, and he just stands up.
And you see the face, you see the head on the ground, and its mouth is moving, and it's got a pickaxe in its brain.
And so I appreciate that even in the terror there is room for comedy because in reality that's what would happen. There would
Yeah.
be funny things happening and there would be at least one guy going, "That's fucking funny." And it would probably be
Did you
me
get
as
the
long as I
feeling?
lasted in the apocalypse, which I don't think would be very long.
Did you get the feeling when you were watching Day of the Dead? At least I did, that the filmmakers were tired of this genre. I really honestly got the feeling that nobody really wanted to make this
I
movie.
think Romero making Day of the Dead the way that he did, obviously.
Day of the Dead, by the way, which has nothing to do with the Mexican
No, no.
celebration of
That would have been a better movie.
because every time I put Day of the Dead in Google, that's the first thing that comes up.
You should just Day of the Dead parentheses 1985.
Yeah.
um, but I think he was trying to stray away from the slam bang action because he was getting tired of it. I think he wanted to move into different things and he wanted to use what he was famous for
Yeah.
and try to use that to get him into an area that he's not known for. Because Day
Yeah.
of the Dead is very much a drama with zombies in it instead of a zombie horror movie. At least
Yeah.
as far as I've seen, which again I still have 45 minutes left of the movie. Um,
Yeah, I've got 20 minutes left, and I have a strange feeling I'm not missing anything. I mean, I'll watch the rest of it, but it, I'm so put off by this movie. It starts out on the wrong note,
mhm.
and for me, it's been on the wrong note. You really have no idea. When I came home last night and I sat down to watch this, you really have no idea how much I hated this movie because they sit there and they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk and they're not saying anything. And it's just, I'm getting frustrated. They go in this room and they talk. They go in this room and they talk. And then two people go off in a side room and they talk. And I'm like, this is a zombie movie, right? The zombie was the dialogue? Is that God.
Well, I mean,
And
he
all the
wasn't
sexual
allowed to
violence
use
and all
Living
this.
Dead, so there's no proof that any of it was living. So yeah, the
Ugh.
dialogue was kind of dead.
Ugh.
It's I don't know. I see the social commentary in it, but I also it's very heavy-handed and poorly executed. I get where they're going. I get where he's going with it. And I was kind of being a little bit more forgiving with it, but I'm sure that
Yeah.
in the last 45 minutes he will do something that will make me retract that because the ends of his movies are so gross. They tend to put me off, with the exception of Night of the Living Dead, which I can watch and rewatch without real problem. I don't know why.
Oh, Really, you can't know how much I hate this movie. It's free on YouTube, by the
Yeah.
way, as we're recording this.
It's also
But as
on
I'm sitting there,
HBO Max.
as I'm sitting there watching it last night, I'm just like, oh God, I do not want to watch this. And this was 30 minutes into the movie when I realized that every single person in this movie is an obnoxious asshole. And I'm like, I've got to stick with these people for the next. I've got to stick with these people for the next hour and a half.
Well, yeah, the best part of Day of the Dead is that it's only an hour and 41 minutes versus the Dawn of the Dead's running time of 2 hours and 19 minutes. If
I can watch Dawn of the Dead.
But if Day of the Dead had an equal running time, it would be insufferable.
Dawn of the Dead and Return of the Living Dead have about the same running time. Yeah, I'm telling you, Return of the Living Dead feels like it runs only about 80 minutes.
It does.
Because it moves, it goes so fast. You know,
It's only an hour and a half. Return of the Living Dead is
it an hour and a half?
91 minutes, yeah.
Is it? Okay. I thought it was 2 hours. But
the pace is unbelievable.
It is. It is. Because once you get out of that cold opening,
yeah,
it never stops. Yeah. So, I'm glad you enjoyed it. This is my Halloween perennial. I watch this every year.
Well, I'm glad that finally had me sit down and watch it, because I'd always just kind of avoided it because it looked like it was just a joke and I didn't really care about it. But knowing that it was just a joke and it's a lot of fun, that's different.
Yeah.
What do we have coming up?
Next week is your choice. We're going to talk about the film that ruined Michael Powell's career. But it's a great film. It's called Peeping Tom.
It is. I've been.
It's about a pervert who murders beautiful women with his camera.
Right, so he can see their expression as they're being murdered and dying. It's like, it is sick.
It's a sick little film, but
it is.
It's great.
It's really good though.
Again, it ruined Michael Powell's career.
Yeah, because it came out the same year as Psycho and had a very different impact on the directors' careers.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
Isn't that strange?
But we're doing that next week, and then
Turkey Month.
Turkey Month begins.
And we're going to start with it by what does God need for the starship? We're talking about Star Trek V.
We're going to talk about Star Trek V, and then we're going to roll into Sphere, because
we're going under the sea.
Because why not? And then we're coming back up for
Raw Deal.
80s action at its worst.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth week of Turkey Month has not quite been decided yet.
Still up in the air.
There are a few options. I'm waiting to see how you feel about one or two of the things that I've floated. But we'll find out.
This has been an exhausting week. Let me tell you what happened. This has been an exhausting week. I have been through... I watched Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Return of the Living Dead, and also for my my Halloween thing over on my... I'm writing a thing on Overthinking Oscar. I'm writing a thing on Poltergeist, so I've now been through those three films, plus Poltergeist, Poltergeist 2, and Poltergeist 3. That's been my week. Crappy sequels, for the most part. But
hey,
anyway,
you had Quite On in there too, so
yeah,
I mean,
I had Kite On in there too, yeah.
That's good. So so you can listen to us on. I skipped over it. That about wraps it up here for us, as it does.
He's lost his
Cut to the
brain.
chase. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube and iTunes. You can hit the like, subscribe, and enable the notifications there. All of our back episodes are at the podbaydorspodcast.wordpress.com. You can find us on Twitter at pod_bay. Copy and paste that and go over to Patreon. That's where we are there too, at pod_bay. We thank you so very much for listening, and the Pod Bay doors are now closed.
The mission had been complete.